Hello, and welcome to the series on exploring modern data security and management. The series is sponsored by Cohesity and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this series, which is going to span various critical topics when it comes to evaluating modern data security and management solutions, ranging from multi-cloud data protection and recovery to intelligent ransomware defense to supporting efforts around AI-driven insights. So our first topic is multi-cloud data protection and recovery. Basically, everyone's situation these days is dealing with multi-cloud, and we're going to have a wide-ranging conversation about that with a great panel of experts who I'll introduce in a moment. And of course, we'll leave time for your questions so you can get in on the conversation too. So we want to shape this discussion in a direction that's most helpful to you all and your current concerns and requirements. So ask those questions. And speaking of which, let's do some housekeeping. So to ask your questions, first, just find that questions box in your webinar control panel and start entering them there. A lot of you have discovered that box already, and you've been saying, hi, we love to see that. Feel free to practice for asking questions later by jumping in there right now and letting us know where you're logging in from. The Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might have. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know there in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. Each session in this webinar series comes with a companion white paper from Actual Tech Media on the topic. So right now, I'd encourage you to go into the handouts tab and grab that PDF on multi-cloud protection and recovery. Trust me, you're going to want that resource, and these webinars always end faster than you'd expect. You don't want to forget to grab it later. So download that right away so you've got it afterwards as a reference. And if you like the paper, which I'm sure you will, feel free to share it with friends and colleagues who could benefit from the information in there. Now, third, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions on today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the link with the details there. Now, finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. So to help encourage those questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. So after the event is over, we'll look at all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. All right, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's get to today's fantastic content. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. One of our experts for this multi-cloud discussion today is Jenny Gordon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jenny Gordon. I work at Cohesity as a senior product marketing manager, and I oversee our backup as a service offering. And, this topic is really of interest to me because one of my passions is really thinking about, understanding what buyers need and connecting them to solutions that can address those pain points. So really looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. We're really looking forward to your insights too. Thanks so much for joining us. And we have one other speaker here today, and that is Melissa Palmer, who's a technology analyst and VMware certified design expert, and a regular presenter on Actual Tech Media Expert Series sessions and keynotes for our other events. Melissa, always a pleasure to have you here. For those who don't know you already, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your career journey with data protection.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Scott. My name is Melissa Palmer. You might also know me as VMIS. My background is very, very heavy virtualization, data security, data protection. And one of the things I always focus on my practice is kind of the complete solution for a customer, right? And a lot of times I don't want to spoil what we're going to talk about too badly. People will overlook things. And protecting their data is one of those things that is kind of overlooked. So we're really looking forward today to this discussion to kind of make sure that you've got all your bases covered as you go on this multi-cloud journey.
Awesome. That's great. All right, so I'm going to start off with, really one of the cardinal sins of any post 2022, speech or presentation, which is using a Chat GPT definition. So cliche city, here we come. Let me figure out how to advance. There we go. All right. So this is just the, for the purpose of this discussion, we kind of need to level set on just sort of a working definition of multi-cloud. So here's what ChatGPT had to say. Multi-cloud refers to the use of multi-cloud computing services from different providers within a single architecture or organization. Instead of relying on a single cloud provider, a multi-cloud approach involves distributing applications, workloads, and data across several cloud environments, which may include a mix of public clouds, e.g. AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and private clouds. That actually strikes me as not a bad definition. Jenny, what do you think?
I would say that's pretty much my understanding of it as well. Yeah. Good on ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. I think a lot of people, when you think multi-cloud, your mindset automatically goes to that public cloud ecosystem and how I'm using different public clouds. I think a lot of people forget the on-prem stuff, or what we call, I guess, private clouds, right? That can be a part of someone's multi-cloud journey. And I think that's the piece that's often overlooked. So yeah, ChatGPT, this seemed like it actually knew what it was doing for once.
Right. Yeah.
I think the one thing that I would probably add to that definition too, if I were writing it or editing it, would be to include SaaS applications, because those sometimes get
that's
overlooked.
good. Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people add into those. All right. Well, cool. So we've got a working definition here for multi-cloud. And so for this next slide here, this is some research from 451 Research. It was from a survey of enterprise IT pros that was released in 2023, so pretty recent. And it's about various things, including how many are in multi-cloud and how they got there. So I just wanted to go through some of those data points, before we start this part of the discussion. But they found that 98% of these enterprise users were using at least two cloud infrastructure providers. So on that one, I think of AWS and Azure or something like that. And 31% were using four or more, so getting into like an Oracle cloud or, various things in Google, and sort of specialized ones. And then this next one I thought was kind of funny. 96% are using at least two SaaS providers, with only 45% using five or more. That almost makes me think, like, did the respondents understand the question? Because I can't imagine there are too many organizations out there that don't have like at least five SaaS applications, going, or maybe they haven't talked to their marketing department lately and don't realize how much stuff they're using. But but as far as multi-cloud goes, how do organizations get themselves into that multi-cloud situation? I kind of assume that it's nobody's first choice, but maybe that's not true. But I'll kick that to Jenny first. How do organizations get there that they've got this multi-cloud?
Yeah, so I do think there are a lot of benefits to having this type of setup. But to address your question more directly in terms of maybe it's not their first choice, I think M&A is one. Obviously, when you're bringing a bunch of organizations together, I think the example that you were kind of briefly touching on right there about, not believing that, people probably have more applications. I think that's another common way of, your marketing team has one application, maybe your IT team has another. As kind of digging through some of our case studies earlier today. And this one customer of ours, each department of this educational institution had different ways of saving their files and different permissions. So I think, M&A and, again, just different organizations or different departments within an organization having different tools that they use can kind of create this complicated network that, is difficult to protect, which we'll talk a little more about today.
Yeah, Melissa, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think M&A and just, like Jenny said, different use cases, different business requirements. But remember how easy it is to like get started with the cloud? Like a lot of them even let you like start for free, right? Don't even put in a credit card yet. Play around a little bit.
Yeah.
And then after the first month or something like that. So I think maybe we've seen also, especially in the earlier days before there were good practices in place in most organizations, people just kind of took a credit card because it was faster than getting infrastructure and they got their app online real fast. And that's where it stayed forever, right? Like this kind of rogue developer, rogue app owner wanted to kind of circumvent things and make things work better and quicker. And they went to their own cloud, and this other application owner went to that cloud, right? Like again, a lot of times, a lot of the clouds have pretty much the same functionality these days, but they might do it a little different. Like, well, we really like how AWS implemented their database service better than how Microsoft did. So we're going to go to AWS for this database heavy app. We have a different app, Microsoft, they were a little bit more suited, and that's our preference. So we're going to go there. I think just because it's so easy to go to multiple clouds, does that mean it's the best thing you should do? No, but I think we've seen a lot of people being picky and choosy of what they're going to use where versus, I'm only going to use one cloud at a time, right? And again, multi-cloud, we're also talking about on-prem. So even if you're just using Azure and you have an on-prem data center, technically that is a multi-cloud environment.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Yeah, and one of the other things, just going back to that 451 research survey, was they had some multi-cloud use cases there. And some of the things that people were looking for were data redundancy, data mobility, just reading off the slide here, cost optimization, risk mitigation, and then geographic expansion. So, there are a lot of legitimate reasons to be, in multi-cloud as well. But even though a lot of us back into it, there are some people who go eyes wide open and want to be there. Okay, so for this next part of the discussion, I'm going to be just pulling a quote here from the actual white paper. In this green part, it's talking about multi-cloud, having some drawbacks. And this was pulling from a survey saying that 87% of organizations adopting a multi-cloud strategy say managing that multi-cloud has become one of the top 3 cloud challenges for enterprises. So it's just like you bring together your multi-cloud, and then suddenly that's an issue that you're constantly dealing with. So, when it comes to the backup and data protection end of it, Jenny, what are some of the challenges that multi-cloud creates?
Yeah, so I think I'm just going to go with my top one, which is visibility. And I think, again, it really comes down to that visibility. And when you have a multi-cloud infrastructure, you're using different clouds, some on-prem, your data is everywhere. And when that happens, it's more difficult to protect the information. It's more difficult to manage it. And ultimately, it's hard to identify when there are issues with that data. So I would say the number one drawback is, we, on the previous slide you had, it's great because maybe if you do have data in different places, if one of your servers goes down, you have kind of a failback option. But, having data in these different places increases your attack surface and, just creates complexity. So I think that's probably kind of the top drawback for me.
Observability. That's a great one. Melissa, what about you? What challenges do you see?
Yeah, that's a huge one. Just the problem of people don't even necessarily know what they have in the cloud because we've talked about all the different ways to get there, right? So maybe I put this app there and this app there and this app there, and I don't have any consistency necessarily between them, especially if I'm in a really siloed environment and this app owner went that way and that app owner went this way. How am I supposed to protect everything if I don't even know like where it is or what it's doing? And I think that when I've seen people get burned in the cloud, it's because they didn't go in with the right mindset and the right planning. They went in like, here's this credit card, here's the app team, let's go. No one sat down and took the time to plan it, right? Because at the end of the day, the cloud is just someone else's data center. and it's not like this magical thing in the sky that everybody thinks about. You do still have responsibilities in the cloud, and data protection is absolutely one of them. And again, people go in with this kind of, oh, the cloud is magic, it'll solve all my problems. They don't do the things they need to do to solve their problems.
Yeah. The magical cloud.
Yeah, it's not magic. Sorry, folks. hate to rain on your parade if we're talking about the cloud, right? It is not magic.
Yeah. Hey, before we get into this next the next thing, we did have a question from Paul that I think is a good clarification question. So I'll just ask that now. But Paul says, when you refer to multi-cloud, are you saying applications running across multiple CSPs, or just multi CSPs with different apps running on that CSP? My read on that question is that we're really talking about the second case, the first case. So applications running across multiple CSPs, not like having a ton of different stuff on AWS, like a ton of different cloud partitions. But is that your understanding too, Melissa, of like, what we're talking about with multi-cloud?
Yeah, and that all kind of ties back to who's doing what, right? So I might have a single application that does have components across different clouds for valid reasons, right? I might have different performance specifications. It might be a cost thing. Wow, this storage is so much cheaper in this cloud than it is in this cloud. Or I might say, okay, we're using this cloud for production and this cloud for GR or something like that. So there's a lot of different ways we can go with it. And it all kind of applies the same way, whether you're using multiple CSPs for your applications, or this one has this app, this one has this app, or like a prod DR type thing. Like all of this kind of applies here. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, Paul, thanks for the question. It's always good to clarify what we're talking about. Hopefully that cleared it up a little bit. So, the next thing that I wanted to get into was, are there any advantages from a backup perspective to using multi-cloud? And Jenny, I'll kick that one to you first.
Yeah, so I think we already touched on some of them earlier. And as I said, I think redundancy is one. So if one site goes down, you have another. I think, there's security, and I think that ties to the redundancy of having your data in different places. I also mentioned that, kind of spreading the data apart can also increase some security issues. But I think those are two. And then also kind of compliance is another one.
Compliance, that's a really important one. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Melissa, anything that what do you see as some of the advantages?
Yeah, exactly. Like we kind of said, the cloud is someone else's data center. Would you have all your backups in a single on-prem data center and that's it? Like I just have my backups in a single data center? Like, no, of course not, right? So even just sending a copy of my backup data to multiple clouds, right? That is a huge component of any multi-cloud strategy, because, things happen once in a while. And you don't always notice, oh, look, this cloud provider has an outage, this cloud provider has an outage. It might be short, it might not be a big deal. But if you need something during that outage and that's where your backup is, you're not going to be able to do everything. So it kind of goes back to, let's design everything the best way. Is every cloud going to go down at once? No, but your cloud provider might have issues, or your circuit to a single cloud provider to on-prem might have an issue, right? And I can't bring the data back from that cloud because I can't connect. So it is important, even just from a backup data perspective, and having our data to make sure we have it in multiple places.
Awesome. Excellent. And Jenny, kind of to that point, what have you seen customers doing to back up their multi-cloud environments?
Yeah, so I think tying on a theme I introduced a little bit earlier. So I think some things that we see customers doing before we start to work with them is, and I think Melissa was talking about this a little earlier as well, is, especially with legacy solutions, a lot of organizations start, bringing on different tools to solve different use cases and end up with kind of a hodgepodge of a tech stack. And so I think one thing that, is really helpful, again, as I said from earlier, is just really having a tool to unify all of those data kind of workloads and environments. So no matter where your data lives, that you're able to easily manage it and protect it, and also, again, readily identify if there's anything that is wrong with the data. So I think that is something that we've seen a lot of customers do, is kind of institute that single pane of glass with our solution.
Yeah, the single pane of glass can be, so important in that scenario. Okay, excellent. So, we've talked about, some of the things that customers are doing. What are some of the worst case scenarios or examples of, Melissa, what are some of the worst case scenarios of ways to back up multi-cloud that you've seen?
How about not backing it up?
I was going to say,
and I'm not, I wish I was joking. I am not joking. A lot of people will go into the cloud again, thinking it's magic, not having a good understanding of a shared responsibility model. So not necessarily protecting their data, or they weren't protecting their data correctly on-prem either, right? I didn't have good, well-defined RPOs and RTOs. So when I move that to the cloud and I still don't have my recovery objectives well-defined, guess what? I'm still going to have problems in the cloud, right? So people haven't taken a step back and said, okay, for example, here's my gold, silver, bronze workloads. I know this is all my mission critical stuff that needs to be protected a certain way. People just say, hey, let's just go, or we need to. The worst thing I've ever heard in my life was someone tell me that they had to be out of their data center into a cloud within 6 months, because the CTO would not get their bonus unless they had evacuated the data center. And that was the whole driver for them getting out of the data center as quickly as possible. The CTO wouldn't get their bonus if anything was left. And that's what this organization was operating under. So they were taking all sorts of shortcuts. You better believe they were not backing that stuff up when they got it, because their only concern was getting out of the data center. So again, it's about taking a step back. And this is a great opportunity, right? If you need to really kind of implement a good multi-cloud data protection strategy, this is the opportunity to get all that stuff right? Spend the time with your app teams, spend the time with the business owners, get those RPOs and RTOs well-defined, and then protect your data accordingly.
Yeah, I agree. There were two things that you said that I really liked. I think the first one was, and, I know we were talking a little bit in our prep call just about kind of understanding what type of security the cloud offers. And I think, Melissa, you stated that shared responsibility model. So, cloud providers offer a certain degree of security, but really understanding what they offer in terms of protection and what they don't, I think is really important. And, some cloud providers do offer those native capabilities and protection, but it might not be the offer the retention windows or the level of granularity.
Or it might be good enough for some of the workloads, but not all of them. Correct. And if you haven't taken the time to pay attention to it, you might not realize that until it's too late.
Yeah. And that was the second point that I really loved that you made, of just understanding. I think, maybe we'll get into best practices a little later, but really starting with doing a deep dive into your data, understanding where it lives, understanding which is the most important to back up, how often you're going to back it up, and really having that defined as you're going into this process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's you mentioned best practices. So let's just get straight into that. We just talked about some worst practices.
Isn't it more fun to start with the worst practices, though?
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Jenny, maybe I'll give it to you to start on that. What are some of the best practices for backing up?
I was going to say the best practices come from learnings from, the bad ones. So as I keep harping on, I think having that unified tool, I think that's really important for, again, having everything under one roof and being able to quickly protect it and spot issues. I And then again, as I just noted, really starting off with understanding where your data is, what you need to protect. And I think, you referenced earlier in the call this discussion as part of a series, and we're going to do one on security and AI, and I'm sure we'll tease kind of this concept out a little more in those. But at Cohesity, we really kind of believe that the management and the protection of data is kind of foundational to security. In order to recover quickly and effectively, you need to make sure that your data is consolidated and you kind of have, again, that unified solution for protecting it first. So I would also say, making sure that your backup strategy is connected to your security strategy and thinking of them as two sides of a coin and really connected, and also partnering with your security team to make sure that you're on the same page. I think those are a couple of best practices to really make sure that you are setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, Melissa, anything to add to that?
Yeah, unified management is probably one of my favorites. I don't want to be protecting data differently depending on what cloud I'm in. That's just too much overhead for my people, and this is too critical to mess with, right? I don't think anybody's actually said the word ransomware yet, and I know we're going to talk about that more on another webinar, but I just want to throw that word out there. That is the number one driver right now for a lot of organizations, and that's why the security piece has come into data protection, right? And I've done a lot with ransomware in my career, especially ransomware targeting VMware environments and the VMware infrastructure. And, it is two sides of the same coin. And the trick is our data is not secure if it's not protected. Because if someone gets in and encrypts something and we don't have a backup, well, guess what? You're done anyway, right? So that's all really important. But that unified management, right? Like this is too important to mess with. I don't want to be using a point product in every different cloud for every different workload. Or how am I ever going to manage that properly? And the other thing I would add is, we've talked a little about recovery objectives. Coming up with a good set of recovery objectives that your workloads fit into. I like the gold, silver, bronze approach. I like to joke about a plastic tier too, like the stuff that like you want to protect it, but you won't like necessarily need to recover it in a DR situation anytime soon. Like maybe it's like, that test environment that you use once or twice a year, right? Something like that. We still have to protect it, of course, but maybe the recovery is not as important. So I use gold, silver, bronze, plastic. But like really applying that to all your workloads in all the clouds the same way. If I'm in AWS and Azure, my goal needs to have the same RPO and RTO no matter what cloud it is, right? So when we get a consistent set of policies across all of our data and we're using a unified tool, that is probably the best defense to a security threat we could possibly have, right? Knowing that everything is protected.
Yeah, and you guys both mentioned unified management. I just wanted to, this is actually, more stuff from the white paper, which you could download over in your document section. But, just wanted to go through some of the requirements of multi-cloud backup solutions, and just pulled out of, a bulleted list from the white paper. The top one was unified management, but anything you guys want to say about any of these other ones, covering.
I feel like the protection for the different types of workloads, on-prem, cloud, SaaS data, that comes into unified management too, a little bit, right? Because I want to be able to use one tool like for everything instead of, I got to back up Office 365. Oh no, I got to back up this database. Like it's just too much for everybody. Nobody has the time and the resources to do that kind of stuff anymore, right? And we did not talk a lot about recovery, but I mean, why are we even backing everything up? It's not actually about the backup. It's really about the recovery, right? So being able to instantly recover whatever we need to get up and running as quick as possible. And then cyber recovery, right? That's a different type of recovery than, oh no, my storage array fell over, right? We need to make sure that we're looking at our data and making sure that we're not restoring infected data and have a plan for all that kind of stuff too. It's just a very different type of scenario. And the trick is, and again, why this data protection security coin is so far together, we don't know what we're dealing with when it happens. We can say, hypothetically, we might get hit by this strain of ransomware. We don't know when it happens. We don't know until we get in there and we start scanning, we start looking when the ransomware actually got in, right? We don't know if everything's infected, right? So the cyber recovery is a little bit different than a traditional kind of disaster recovery.
Yeah, I think for me, and Melissa, you just said this basically, that the unified management is kind of an enabler of all of these different ones.
Exactly.
It enables you to see all of those different data sources, protect them, have that clean data that you can back up, and also having it in one place enables you to scale and has that solution that can grow with you as you grow. And for a lot of people, that boom and explosion of data is a huge issue. So having something that can kind of address that is really important.
It's important. And you got to remember, we're all humans. And at the end of the day, any kind of recovery scenario is stressful. I remember this is back when I was like an infrastructure intern way ahead of time. We had some outage, right? And like the CEO is there standing in the, like we had this area with, I was like 6 chairs in this big cube, right, where we all sat. The CEO is there like breathing down your neck, like, what happened? What's going on? Why isn't it back online? And then you want to remember which of the 60 backup systems that you have to log into and start like trying to restore stuff to. Like that just, it doesn't happen. Stressed out people make mistakes. So we need to make sure that we're keeping the recovery as simple, as streamlined, and as automated as possible. I'll never forget that. Like I still remember that. Like it was nothing like that. Like I don't know. Like no one knew what happened. It was crazy.
Sounds like a nightmare.
Well, yeah, it definitely does. How often do you wake up having a nightmare about that situation?
You know, every once in a while, I have these weird like data center nightmares where like and maybe this is just me because I do a lot of like ransomware resiliency architecture and stuff. It's like somebody did something and you can't. I've literally had nightmares about that kind of stuff. And I'm like, but I designed this system; it should work. I don't understand why it's not working. Like I wish I was joking, but I've had that dream.
Jenny, maybe we could talk about some customers, that you guys have been successful and effective in backing up their data from multi-cloud environments.
Yeah, so I touched on this one a little earlier, but I think there was something Melissa just said that I was like, oh, I'm gonna, I want to bring in this example, but I knew we were gonna kind of talk about this a little later. But one of our customers, and I mentioned this earlier in the call, is an academic institution, and each department had a different kind of process for backing up their Windows folders, different permissions, and this became even more difficult to manage as their data grew. So again, something else that I just talked about, and they needed to back up virtual servers. They needed to back up physical servers. So they had a lot of different data and a lot of different infrastructure. And so, one thing that was really helpful for them is, again, having that kind of what we've been talking about, that single pane of glass. And with it, they were able to put RPOs and RTOs in place. They were able to reduce backups from a matter of hours to minutes. And also just, that kind of having that single UI took a lot of pressure. And again, hopefully they don't have nightmares, maybe not anymore, but they were able to, again, with a simple tool, kind of take the pressure off their team. And I think also, some tools that are simple and easy to use, you don't need a lot of expertise to take advantage of them. So that was, I think, one thing that a lot of our customers have been able to do is reduce the complexity of their environment, and also just see huge drops in time to manage their data processes and backup and protection processes, and just being able to cut that time down, not just from kind of an operational perspective, but also from just purely the time spent to recover the data and back it up.
Excellent. Great example. If you guys had to sum up the most important things that you would tell IT pros about, backing up multi-cloud environments, what would they be? And Melissa, I'll start with you.
I would say a good set of data protection policies across all data and all clouds, like use that tiering system, and a tool that will handle all of your workloads, all of your clouds, all of your SaaS, again, instead of going with all these multiple solutions that are just going to increase kind of complexity and headache and remember, I hate to say the R word again, ransomware, it's not if, it's when, I'm sorry. If you haven't been hit by it yet, I'm really glad, but you should be getting ready for when the inevitable does happen. And, being able to quickly recover is a huge part of whether or not you're going to stay in business or not, quite honestly.
And stay tuned for the next episode of this series for a lot of ransomware detail. More on that later. Jenny, what about for you as far as
just waiting to hop in on this one. So I think to just pull on that last point, so we've been talking a lot about this unified management that you see on the screen, or the single pane of glass. I think that's really important. So having that data management capability, but also having it integrated with data security capabilities. Again, no, it's not if, it's when. So I think having that under one roof is really important. And having a tool that's just simple. But I think to get a little more maybe strategic, so I think with any project, this is kind of like project management 101, but in terms of picking the right solution for your needs, I think it's really critical to start the process by clearly defining your goals and what capabilities you need to solve them, and using that to be the guiding light in your search. Because that, kind of starting there will really help inform and help you be effective in selecting a solution or devising a plan.
Awesome. That's great. Well, Jenny, we've been talking pretty generally about problems and solutions. Wanted to turn things over to you for a few minutes just to go through, Cohesity's particular approach to these multi-cloud issues.
Yeah, I'd love to talk a little more about that. And so I think, I'll just see if I can advance the slide. Okay, great. So we actually just released a new report. This is from the last year's edition, but I think this ties nicely. Again, we haven't talked too much about ransomware, but I think this really speaks nicely to the impact if you do not have an effective backup strategy. So again, thinking about in the event of an attack or an outage, how long it took people to recover. And 95% said it would take them over 24 hours. And, I think a lot of our customers have said, 24 hours or shorter for SLAs to get back online. And so a lot of people aren't going to hit that. 71% said it would take over 4 days. That's still a very long time. And 41% said it would take over a week. So this just illustrates, I think, or really underscores the need for that clean backup copy and how important it is to be able to readily access it in the case of an outage or attack. Because, being down for 24 hours, being down for a week or more has significant impact on your business. And, if it's a ransomware attack, there are stats out there that it's not even just the money to pay the ransom, it's everything that follows from the recovery to the loss of customers, the impact on the brand, all that stuff. So I think those are really important things to keep in mind. And that's kind of where Cohesity comes in. So at Cohesity, our mission is really to protect, secure, and provide insights into the world's data. And I think this aligns very nicely with the series that we have. So, we're talking about the kind of like protection part. Our next series is about really that security part. And then the last one is really about deriving insights from your data. But just to kind of continue to familiarize you guys with all of us, we work with 6 of the Fortune 10, 40% of the Fortune 100, and we operate across a bunch of different industries as well as, customers across the globe. But to give you a little more insight into what we actually do, and I'll talk about that a little more in a moment, but I think thinking about what makes us unique and why customers pick us is one, well, actually, I should have started with my favorite number three, simplicity. But number one is speed. So the fastest speed and recovery of any data management provider. So as I said, you can't be offline for more than one day and before, even 1 hour before it becomes a huge issue. So speed, security capabilities, which we'll talk a little more about in the next session. As I said, my favorite, simplicity. So our control plane and UX have been rated by analysts and designers among the best. Restore is just as easy as one click. Scale, something else that I mentioned is really important. And lastly, smarts or insights. And this is something we're going to talk a little more about in our last series, but our Gen AI capabilities are really unique and enable individuals and teams to gain insights from their backup data. But in terms of what we do, so Cohesity is a data backup and recovery solution, and backup and recovery solution, and we protect data on-prem, from SaaS applications, in the cloud. So that's why I think both from a company perspective, but also, as I said earlier on, just connecting buyers to solutions that fit their needs. That's kind of why we're here today. But we kind of, I would say our core capabilities are that data protection, data security, and data insights. But we also offer, capabilities for data mobility and data access, all within our data cloud, which is, we have this single pane of glass where we can manage all of that data, and it's simple, and it enables, we work with, organizations that manage hundreds of terabytes of data and make it look easy. So that's just a little bit about us. And if you're curious of learning more about Cohesity, you can go to our website, cohesity.com, and we have lots of information on all of our different kind of products there, and videos or demos and that kind of thing. So that's a little bit about our end-to-end platform and how we help the backup and recovery process across multi-cloud.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And, you got into the ransomware issue a little bit, which of course, we'll talk about next time, which we're excited about. But I'm also really excited about the conversation for the third session in the series. Just what you guys are doing with AI is really interesting. And I'm looking forward to digging. I don't want to say too much about it now because
we can't spoil ourselves, right? It's hard. We want to share it, but no.
Episode 3. Exactly.
It's really cool. Yeah.
So we do have some questions coming in from the audience, first one, here is a question from Jeffrey, and in this is probably, let's take it as a Cohesity question first, and then maybe Melissa, I'll kick it to you just as a general philosophical question. Jeffrey's asking, can I restore data from one tenant to another? Is that something that you can do with Cohesity?
Yes.
Over there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Melissa, are there any gotchas as far as just from a general standpoint when you're restoring from one tenant from another?
I'm going to give you a snarky answer, not if you're using the right product, right? And I'm not saying anything about anybody, but there shouldn't be, because that's the whole point of this, right? Our recovery needs to be seamless no matter where we're recovering to, because that's kind of what I spoke about. Well, we don't know how a ransomware event will happen until it happens. So I have heard of cases where people are on-prem and they've told me, we're just going to restore in place for a ransomware, right back over the old VM, right? I'm like, that's great. What happens when you call the FBI and say, hey, I've been ransomware? And they go, by the way, your environment's quarantined. You can't touch it. you're not restoring in place. You have to go someplace else, which is probably going to be a public cloud, right? So this is kind of like all table stakes for how things need to work in today's climate. Yeah, you absolutely need to be able to recover wherever you need to based on what's unfolded.
Yeah, you don't want to return your data to infected environment.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, a question from Justin. Jenny, this one's for you. Is it possible to quickly restore Cohesity protected workloads from one CSP to another CSP, or would that not work due to the conversion process that would have to take place?
Yeah, so, we allow people to back up their data. One of the things that makes us so unique is you're able to back up to your cloud of choice. So you can back it up to Azure, you can back it up to AWS. So we do offer that choice.
Okay. All right, excellent. There was another question from Justin. This is an interesting one. He's wondering, can Cohesity guarantee restore times if the CSP themselves will only guarantee a window of time when a restore might be completed in? I mean, this sounds like a question about the shared responsibility model almost, in kind of the point of having an external backup provider like Cohesity do it for you, so you're not dependent on the cloud provider. But I'll let you answer it.
Yeah, so I might have to follow up on this one. I know we're always whenever I do Q&A, very careful of the word guaranteed.
I know, right? Everybody is.
I know, be careful about that one.
I have one way that you can guarantee your recovery time. Absolutely, that no one can get in trouble for. You have to test it.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think what's interesting that, maybe this person was trying to get a little more information about is, with the shared responsibility model, maybe where Cohesity is a little different because, you could say, well, and we talked about kind of understanding limitations earlier in the call of what a cloud provider offers versus maybe a vendor. We like to talk about Cohesity as an extender or a filler of gaps when it comes into relation to kind of the capabilities that, something like AWS or Azure offers. And I think with regards to our solution is it offers more flexibility in terms of those retention windows. Maybe you can only store data from like a mailbox. I forget what the retention window is. It might be like 30 or 60 days, but we enable you to restore it recover it for a longer amount of time. And it's more granular in terms of you can get down to individual files or documents. So I think that goes back to the instruction we gave earlier in the call, is just really doing your due diligence and understanding what cloud providers offer in terms of security capabilities versus what a vendor can do. And also, how they can interplay with each other to make sure your data is as safe as possible.
Okay, excellent. And another one here from Ian he's wondering what challenges have people faced with multi-cloud implementation and how did they overcome them? I'm assuming that's from a backup perspective. I know we've gone through a few case studies, a few customer examples, but Jenny, I guess this would be a chance that are there any others that you want to chat about?
I was going to say I might kick this one over to Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. The challenges with a multi-cloud implementation really all happen when you haven't done the proper upfront planning and design work. So we talked about kind of coming up with those different tiers of service. What do they look like? And making sure it's uniform across clouds. Because even from, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to have gold AWS VMs and my RPO is 1 hour. My RTO is 30 minutes. But then I have gold Azure VMs and my RTO and RTO are both 15 minutes, right? No, you don't want to do stuff like that. You want to keep everything as simple and consistent as possible across clouds and really come up with good data protection policies to kind of cascade throughout your environment. So you're treating everything the same way with the same kind of the same care that you need to, right? Because if I'm talking about applications that have a low RPO, less than an hour, that's completely different than an application that's, okay, well, an RPO of a day, right? We're just going to protect it once a day and we're good. So those are all the kind of things that people do not always think about upfront that kind of come back later to get them. So that's one big thing that if you're looking to kind of start your multi-cloud data protection strategy, that would be like the first thing I would say to do out of the gate.
I think also, just to quickly hop in related to that, is maybe understanding how the solution integrates with your other tools. I think, again, in the vein of simplicity and just having everything interact, understanding how it interacts with the other applications in your ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
There's one other question here from Ian, what makes Cohesity different from other backup and recovery providers? So I'll kick that to Jenny.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we talked about it on that slide of why customers choose us. And let me see if I can click back onto that slide. I think there are a lot of different things. We'll probably talk about this more in the next session, but we have a lot of partners in our Data Security Alliance that help bolster and extend our security capabilities. I think that's one thing that makes us kind of really unique. And again, plug for the last one, our AI capabilities are pretty novel. So that, and I think a few other things, just our ability to dedupe and decompress, or not decompress, compress data to kind of optimize capacity and costs is something that is really important to a lot of our customers. And I think also, our ability to recover quickly. Those are a couple of things that make us really unique. And I think the last thing that I'll touch on is, again, number two. And when we're thinking about entering this new era of cyber attacks, really making sure that you are secure from all different angles and that you really take a multi-layered approach through MFA, quorum, role-based access, and just being really holistic about it. So those are a couple of different ones. I'm sure I could list more with time, but I'll stop there.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, and I think that's probably a good place to leave it. And Jenny, if somebody wants to get started with Cohesity or find out more, so in addition to downloading the white paper and registering for other events here in the series, what are some good next steps for them?
Yeah, so I think my personal favorite is our demo center. We have interactive demos that it kind of like walks you through step by step how the product works, which is really cool. You can do a free trial. If both of those are a little too deep of a dive for you, just go to our website, check out our backup and recovery pages. And I also love our customer stories. I shared a couple today, but those are really specific to multi-cloud, and everybody on this call probably has a different use case. So we have a lot of case studies. So hopefully you can find a customer that kind of, you connect with from the perspective of what you're going through and what you're looking to solve. So I think those are a couple of my favorite resources. So I'd start there.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you. And Jenny, thank you so much. Really appreciate all the insights, today. And some of the hints for what's coming up. And Melissa, we will see you in the next installment.
Absolutely.
About a month. And equally important topic of intelligent approaches to ransomware, alongside Chris Hoff from Cohesity. So I'm really looking forward to that session. But thank you both for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to let you two go, and we will move into the final element of the presentation here today, which is the prize drawing. And the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card today is Richard Bing Wo from California. So congratulations to Richard Bing Wo. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I just want to thank Cohesity for making this event this first event in the series possible. And we will see you all next time for the installment on intelligent approaches to ransomware. Have a fantastic day.